Good evening, everyone. We're now in First Kings chapter 20. It's a long chapter, and we'll split this into two. Just a recap from where we left off yesterday in chapter 19. There were three things that God wanted Elijah to do, one of which was completed at the end of chapter 19 to find and anoint Elisha as his successor. However, there were two more items that needs to be addressed, and so in chapter 20 and 21, we will see this happening. One would be to anoint Hazael as king over Aram, of which right now it's Ben Hadad. And then the other one would be to anoint Yehu, the son of Nimshi, over the king of Israel, of which right now it is uh, King Ahav. So there are two more kings to deal with. Right now in First Kings chapter 20 and in verse 1. And then Ben Hadad, king of Aram, and king of Aram would be Syria. Now, Syria and Ben Hadad is really an enemy of the Israel, and right now King Ahav is managing Israel, and they will be going into a war. Ben Hadad gathered all his army, and there were 32 kings with him. Now, understand that kings and then king of Aram and little kings together, they're just words that talks about people who are ruling and ruling a fairly large part of the country. Now, Syria is a very large country that is sitting on the northeast of Israel. And they are the perennial, well, sometimes friend and usually enemy, and in this case, enemy of the nation of Israel. And so with him, horses and chariots. Please take note that horses are always with reference to war, animal of war. When we're talking about an animal of peace, that would be a donkey. And so, whenever people talk about riding on a donkey is an unclean animal, but yet very useful as a beast of burden. And it is commonly used in the livelihood of the Israelites. But when we talk about chariots, it will be horses with the chariots. And then it says here, he went up and says he went up and besieged Samaria and fought against it. Remember, at this point in time, it was a split kingdom. Samaria is another name for Israel. It's a capital of Israel, but not Israel as the entire uh, Davidic kingdom. It is now the split kingdom, part of the northern kingdom. The northern kingdom retained the name Israel. And so please bear in mind that when we talk about Israel in a split kingdom fashion, then we need to look at the context. So Samaria represents Israel, and obviously Jerusalem will represent Judah. So with this, it's Samaria. Now, understand that it is always this going up because the Israel terrain is higher than the Syrian terrain. Coming up, it says besieging Samaria would be trying to uh, come around the city, but Samaria itself is a city as well as the representation of the northern kingdom. And coming up to besiege Samaria, they were trying to uncover, or what we call attack, the main city where the king was. Now, Ben Hadad, instead of fighting, says, and then he sent messengers to the city to Ahav, the king of Israel, and said to him, this is what Ben Hadad says. So, Samaria being the capital, it is also the city where Ahav is living. And so Ben Hadad is sending messengers, Malak. Remember, we have talked about this yesterday. Malak is a person who walks on behalf of another. And if Ben Hadad sent messengers, they speak on behalf of Ben Hadad. And the message is in verse 3. It says, your silver and your gold are mine. Your most beautiful wives and children are also mine. So there are two things here. One is wealth, and second is family. In an Eastern Oriental culture, you find that King Ahav has no problem giving money. Giving tribute to a nation that is mightier than you is more or less a requirement. But the family is something which is precious to a household. This is to say that Ben Hadad wants everything of Ahav. In verse 4, it says, and then as the Malach from Ben Hadad gave him the message, the king of Israel replied, as you say, my lord, O king, I am yours as well as all that I have. So notice the conversation. As you say, the idea here of you say is a third person, it's a singular. And it's addressed to my Lord, Adoni, a singular. And that would be, O king, that is Ben Hadad, the king of Aram. I am yours as well as all that I have. So you notice King Ahav is actually in the conversation speaking to King Ben Hadad. But in actual fact, he is actually speaking to the messengers, the Malak. I just want you to pay attention to the conversation. A Malak is somebody who is sent by somebody with authority. A Malak is one who walks on behalf of another person. And so the Malak of King Ben Hadad is really speaking on behalf of King Ben Hadad. And so when the king of Israel replied to the Malak, the messengers of King Ben Hadad, he is addressing all these messengers as if he is speaking to the king, Ben Hadad, present before him. Now, this kind of a concept is what we call an imperial edict. Imperial edict. An imperial edict is somewhat of a formalized, authorized message that has a characteristic that the person bringing the message is actually representing the one who sent them, and the words they speak is as if the emperor was present. And so in this case, as the messengers spoke, that Your silver and your gold are mine. Your beautiful wives and children are mine. They speak not only on behalf of King Ben-Hadad, it literally represents him being there personally, or we can call it like a virtual presence, but in the form of the messengers. And so the reply of the king of Israel is not to the messengers, but it's as though he was speaking to King Ben-Hadad. As you say, my lord, O king, I am yours as well as all that I have. Now we read here in verse 5, and then the messengers returned, meaning what? The messengers went back to King Ben-Hadad, and then the king's messengers came back to King Ahav. So this and then is a bit peculiar because it talks about a time that after this reply, they went back to King Ben-Hadad, and King Ben-Hadad sent them back to King Ahav. That is what it means. So we are missing whatever is being spoken in the presence of King Ben-Hadad. So what we do have is they come back and they reply. Ben-Hadad says this, I indeed send word to you, saying, you shall give me your silver, your gold, your wives, and your children. But about this time tomorrow, I will send my servants to you, and they will search your house and the houses of your servants. They will take in their hands everything that is pleasing in your eyes and take it all away. So this idea of taking it, whatever is pleasing to your eyes, whatever is desirous, whatever is desirable. The king of Aram literally wants to belittle King Ahav. And so I think we are beginning to see that all these back and forth messengers literally represents King Ben-Hadad as if he is there speaking to King Ahav. So please remember, this is very much an imperial edict. Now, after the second time when the messengers came back to King Ahav, the king of Israel, King Ahav, summoned the elders. Verse 7. In verse 7, it says, and then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, the land would be the land of Israel. Please be aware and see this man is looking for trouble. The text here says this word trouble is evil. This is literally what it means. King Ben-Hadad is looking for evil, and he sent me his demand for my wives, my children, my silver, my gold. And I did not refuse him, meaning I did not withhold from him. That's the meaning of the word. Did not withhold. He wanted, I did not keep anything back. And this was told to the elders. Verse 8. The elders heard this, and then all the elders and all the people said this to him. Do not listen nor consent. Now, this would be very different from what King Ahav is saying. Do not listen to him and do not give him what he wants. Do not yield to him, basically. Do not yield to him. This is totally the opposite of this statement here. The elders did not agree to the demands of Ben-Hadad. So in verse 9, after consultation with the elders, It says here, and then he said to the messengers of Ben-Hadad, tell my lord the king, everything that you send to your servant at first, I will do. But this thing I cannot do. Then the messengers departed and brought him word again. Now, this idea is this: the messengers departed to Ben-Hadad and brought Ben-Hadad the word from Achav. And this is what he says. This is now a negation. It shows that King Achav is a bit indecisive. And the reason why it's indecisive, it's because he doesn't know what to do. In the first place, he said yes. Now in the second place, no. And so this is what the messengers departed, went back to Ben-Hadad. The next part here in verse 9 is, and then brought him word again. It's just like before, brought word to Achav. So we're not told exactly how Ben-Hadad spoke to the messengers, but this is really a lapse of a period of time, and the reply of Ben-Hadad came back through the messengers. Verse 10. It says, well, in this case, there is the and then in front, which is missing. And then Ben-Hadad sent word to him, and this is also via the messengers. And he says this, may Elohim, right? May Elohim do to me. This is very similar to Jezebel. Do so to me and more so, if the dust of Samaria will be enough for handfuls for all the people who follow me. This is a solemn oath that he is definitely going to do this, that he's going to come and he's going to attack King Achav. We read in verse 11, and then the king of Israel replied. This is a reply to King Hadad, but it is through the messengers. Tell, he who straps on his weapons had better not boast like the one who takes them off. Basically, this is how should we say, he's poking the king of Aram in his eye. He is now behaving as insolent. He is trying to teach King Ben-Hadad a lesson. And this is all verbal, but there is a consequence. When kings talk to each other, there is a consequence because one party can start to actually want to attack. And now, verse 12, and then when Ben-Hadad heard this message, when the messengers went back, while he was drinking with the kings in the huts, he said this to his servants, take your positions. And so they took their positions against the city of Samaria. Now, obviously, King Ben-Hadad is angry, but he is not going to fight. He's getting his armies to fight. Verse 13. Now, verse 13 says, and then, this is an and then, behold, a prophet approached King Achav, the king of Israel. Now, this prophet is not known to us, but it is said to be the prophet Micaiah. Mikayahu, right? Mikayahu, or in English, it's Micaiah. And you will read more of him in First Kings chapter 22. So he appears right now as a unnamed prophet. And in this case, something is about to happen. And although we read in the previous chapters, there are no more prophets, there's only Elijah left, and Elijah went to find a successor in Elisha. Now, that story is now put aside. Behold, a prophet, uh, it's a prophet who is yet unnamed at this time, and it's not Elijah, because if it was Elijah, he would be named because he is a known prophet. It would be the prophet instead of a prophet. And he says this is what Jehovah says. Have you seen all this great multitude, which is the army of King Ben-Hadad? Behold, I am going to hand them over to you today. This is a phrase that we always say, I'm going to give them into your hands. It's like how God gave the land north of Ammon into the hands of Moses and the Israelites, King Sihon. And further up north would be King Og of Bashan. These are the statements used or the expressions used. And God says, I'm going to give them into your hands, meaning I'm going to give you permission. I'm going to give you the ability to fight to win. Because if you look at it on the surface level, you're not able to win them at all. And so when God says, I'm going to give them into your hands, there will be a supernatural ability somehow that you are going to be victorious over an enemy, which otherwise you will lose. And that is the phrase that's being used here. I'm going to hand them over to you today. I'm going to give them into your hands today. And as a result of that, you shall know that I am Jehovah. So Ani Jehovah literally is a pronouncement that you've seen the fire come down from heaven in Mount Carmel. You're going to see me do this again, because if it's not because of me, it will not happen. See, when God does something, he is there to show that apart from him, it cannot be done. There is no ambiguity when such things happen, that it is the work of God. And in verse 14, we continue. It says, and then Achav says, by whom? To the prophet. And so the prophet said this. Jehovah says, by the young men of the leaders of the provinces. And the young men of the leaders of the provinces are not very much your standard army. And then Achav said, who will begin the battle? Now, this word begin the battle needs a bit of understanding. Verse 14, he says, who will start the battle? Who will fight the battle? Who will take charge of the battle? The word here is not really begin. I think you can say that this word here is who will take charge, who will order, who will make ready, and who will set the battle in motion. And the prophet, he said, You will. You're going to do that. And so it is something which King Achav is not used to. And God wants King Achav to be there in the middle of the battle to understand that it is a battle that in his eyes, naturally, he will not win, but he will. And when he does win, he should recognize that it is the hand of God. And as God spoken through the mouth of the prophet, that God is going to give them the enemy into your hands today. Now, in verse 15, we are told, and then he mustered. Now, this word mustered is not a very good word. The word here, mustered, is from the word pakad. Pakad is visit. It is also to attend to. It is also to number or to count. And so in this case, in the context, it is to count. It is not to muster. So the intent of counting is to know the strength, of the army. And in this counting, he counted the young men of the leaders of the provinces, and there were 232. That's all. And then after this, and after them, this is also again the same word, not mustered, right? He numbered or counted all the people, all the sons of Israel who's going to join into the war. And then it says here 7,000. Now we recall that we do see what God said to Elijah. Now, God said this to Elijah in chapter 19, that at the end of the day, there is 7,000 people who has not bowed down or served Baal. So this would be the 7,000 who is faithful. This is the one who has not bowed or kneeled to Baal. They are the faithful to God. And now their numbers are showing to come into battle, but it's with Achav. And this is important because this is in chapter 19 and in verse 18. God is going to use only the ones who will listen to him. Verse 16. And then, this word and then is missing. And then after the counting, getting ready, they went out at noon. At noon meaning at the time where it is the hottest, it is the brightest, but it was also the time that Ben-Hadad was still drinking himself drunk in the huts with the 32 kings who were helping him. All that were out there were the servants. And so as they were drinking, one of the things is being drunk will not help you because you won't be aware of what's happening. And so in verse 17, it says, and then while King Hadad was drunk, and then these 232 young men, the leaders of the provinces, went first. Ben-Hadad had sent scouts, went out to check out Samaria, and they reported to King Ben-Hadad saying, oh, King some men have come out from Samaria. Now, these were 232 of them, not many. In fact, the army of King Ben-Hadad is far, far more. Now, verse 18 then tells us this: if they come out for peace. Now, what do you mean they come out for peace? They come out not having to fight. Then take them alive. And then he says, well, if they come out to fight for war, then seize them alive. Now, these are the two words that we can see. The word take them is read in two ways. One is to seize them, or arrest them. Then the second one is to catch them. But both are really using the same words. And the reason why I'm showing you, in the English at least, as a slight difference is this. When they come out for peace, they won't be struggling, so just arrest them. If they come out fighting, then you seize them or catch them, because it's part of seizing a fight. But in both cases, while they are still alive, this was the instruction: catch these men who came out from Samaria. Verse 19. So these men went out from Samaria, the young men of the leaders of the provinces, and that would be 232. And then behind him, the army which followed them, the 7,000. In verse 20, it says, and they struck. Now, this word kill is cause to slay, right? Cause to strike. And in this case, strike to kill. It's a very imagery descriptive. They killed each one his man, and the Arameans fled. The word fled here is try to escape, to flee, to escape. And Israel pursued them. And then, and this word is and then, Ben-Hadad, the king of Aram, also tried to flee and escape. Now, this word flee is to slip away. This word escape is to slip away. Also, the idea here is to save, to be saved. They are two very different Hebrew words. The idea here is King Hadad is running away on a horse with horsemen. We now read from here onwards, it is Israel versus Aram. Two nations against each other, not just two kings against each other. And verse 21 reads this way: the king of Israel also went out, and that would be Achav, after the 232 and 7,000. Then King Achav also went out, and then struck the horses and chariots. And this word here is to caused to strike and kill the Arameans in a great slaughter. Now, this idea of a slaughter is to hurt Aram badly. Now, when we talk about hurting Aram badly, you can say that this was a carnage, meaning many people died. Many people means that it will be people greater than 232 plus 7,000. We will end with verse 22. Verse 22 then says this, and then the battle is not over. The prophet, and we are made to understand this is Micaiah, came to approach the king of Israel, Achav, and said to him, go, walk, show yourself courageous, be strong, and know. Now, this word here is not just be aware, but know. This is an important word, and we will touch on it shortly. Let's go through the verse first. And know and see what you have to do. For at the turn of the year, the king of Aram will march against you, and that will be the second attack. In this case, you find that the king is now given instructions. This is something which Achav is not used to, but he is to be bold, be courageous, be knowledgeable by knowing and seeing what to do. Now, this is interesting because this word here, to see, is to consider, to look carefully, to see what he has to do in preparation. Because when the year turns, or when the year returns, king of Aram will march against you, will, actually the word here is to, will rise against you, because it is Aram, Syria, which is lower in terrain, to Israel, which is higher terrain. That would be how going up and down literally means. As of now, King Achav is victorious, at least in this first phase of the battle. He's able to defend himself, but it is at a time where they are making a pause in that battle, because the king of Israel is not that great with his army, and king of Aram is really big in his army. But at this time, he has taken a beating because he was drunk. He wasn't ready. And through King Achav, with 232 leaders and an army of 7,000, was able to push them back. Tomorrow, when we look at the rest of this chapter, then you would see how God extends his hand to give this army into the hand of King of Achav, and we will learn exactly, was King Achav obedient to God or not. And with this, we come to the end of our session today.